Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching the stars through the main view screen. The ship hummed quietly around her as it moved through space at a steady pace. 3 months into their mission, the crew had fallen into a comfortable routine of scanning planets, taking samples, and mapping new star systems in the Kepler expanse. The Defiant was not an impressive ship by galactic standards. Other species had vessels that gleamed like jewels and moved with perfect grace. The human ship looked blocky and practical, with thick armor plating and systems that other races considered crude. But it worked, and that was what mattered to the 127 people aboard. "Captain, we're picking up something on long-range sensors," called out Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. Her voice carried a note of concern that made Elena turn away from the view screen. "What kind of something?" Elena asked, walking over to look at the readings. "Multiple contacts coming in, fast from the edge of the system. The computer is having trouble getting an exact count, but it looks like a lot of ships." Elena felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. They were far from any major shipping lanes, and no one was supposed to be out here. "How many is a lot?" Torres worked at her console for a moment, her face growing pale. "Captain, I'm reading 47 ships. All of them are big, and they're moving in perfect formation." The bridge went quiet, except for the steady hum of the ship's systems. Elena had been in space long enough to know that 47 ships traveling together meant only one thing. "Battle stations," she ordered. "All hands to emergency positions." The lights on the bridge shifted to red as alarms sounded throughout the ship. Elena sat down in the captain's chair and activated the ship-wide communication system. "This is the captain. We have unknown contacts approaching our position. All departments report readiness status." One by one, the department heads checked in. Chief Engineer Martinez confirmed that all systems were running normally. Dr. Sarah Chen from the Science Department reported that her team was securing their equipment. Security Chief Rodriguez announced that his people were armed and ready. The unknown ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a perfect sphere around the Defiant. Elena had never seen anything like it. Each ship was sleek and deadly, with weapons that glowed with barely contained energy. They moved with a coordination that spoke of years of training and absolute discipline. "Captain, incoming transmission," Torres reported. "Put it on screen." The view screen changed to show an alien face that Elena recognized from the diplomatic files. The creature had blue-gray skin, 4 eyes arranged in pairs, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. It was a Zephyrian, one of the warrior races that controlled this part of space. "Human vessel," the alien spoke in heavily accented but clear English. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian fleet. You have entered space that belongs to our people without permission. This is an act of war." Elena stood up, smoothing down her uniform. "Admiral, this is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth, Ship Defiant. We are here on a peaceful scientific mission. Our government filed all the proper paperwork with the Galactic Council months ago." The Admiral's 4 eyes narrowed. "Your government thinks it can send ships wherever it wants because you have made friends with some of the weaker species. But this sector belongs to the Zephyrian Empire, and we do not recognize your claims. Admiral, we don't want any trouble. We're just here to study some planets and take a few samples. We'll be gone in a few days." Kethvar made a sound that might have been laughter. "Humans always think they can talk their way out of everything. Your species has spread across the galaxy like a disease, taking what belongs to others. Today, that ends." Elena felt the hair on the back of her neck stand up. She had hoped this would be a simple misunderstanding, but the tone in the Admiral's voice told her otherwise. "Admiral, please reconsider. Starting a fight with Earth will not end well for anyone." "Starting a fight?" Kethvar's teeth showed in what was definitely not a smile. "Human, you are one small ship surrounded by 47 of our finest warships. This will not be a fight. This will be an execution." The transmission ended, and immediately the Zephyrian ships opened fire. The first barrage hit the Defiant like a hammer blow. The ship shook violently as energy beams and projectiles slammed into the shields. Elena grabbed the arms of her chair to keep from being thrown to the floor. Around the bridge, consoles sparked and the lights flickered. "Shields down to 60%, Torres shouted over the noise of alarms. "Multiple hits on all sections." "Damage report," Elena called out. "Hull breaches on decks 5 and 7, came the reply from damage control. "We've lost main power to the port weapon systems. The number 2 engine is offline." Elena looked at the tactical display and felt her heart sink. The Zephyrian ships had arranged themselves in a perfect sphere around the Defiant, pouring fire into the human vessel from every direction. The shields were failing fast, and they had nowhere to run. "Captain, incoming transmission from the flagship," Torres reported. "Put it through." Admiral Kethvar appeared on the screen again, looking pleased with himself. "Are you ready to surrender?" "Now, human, your ship is crippled and my fleet has barely begun to fight. Submit now, and I promise your crew will be treated according to the laws of war." Elena looked around the bridge. Her officers were all watching her, waiting for her decision. The smart thing to do would be to surrender. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and badly damaged. Any reasonable captain would give up, but Elena Vasquez had not become a starship captain by being reasonable. "Admiral," she said, standing up straight despite the ship shaking around her, "I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to have to decline." Kethvar's expression changed from confident to confused. "You refuse to surrender? Your ship is dying around you." "My ship is damaged, Admiral, not dead. There's a difference." The alien admiral stared at her for a long moment. "Then you choose to die pointlessly. So be it." The transmission ended, and the Zephyrian fleet renewed their attack with even greater fury. The Defiant's shields finally collapsed under the massive bombardment, and energy beams began hitting the hull directly. More alarms joined the chorus as systems failed throughout the ship. Elena activated the internal communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. I know things look bad right now, but we're not done fighting. Chief Martinez, I need everything you can give me. Dr. Chen, start analyzing their attack patterns. Security Chief Rodriguez, prepare the crew for boarding actions." She paused, thinking about her next words carefully. The crew needed to understand what they were facing, but they also needed hope. "People, we are about to show these aliens something they don't expect. They think they know what humans are capable of, but they've never seen us when our backs are against the wall. They've never seen what we do when someone threatens our ship and our crew. Today, they're going to learn." Elena sat back down in her chair as another explosion rocked the ship. Around her, the crew worked with quiet determination, following orders and doing their jobs despite the chaos. She smiled grimly. The Zephyrians thought this fight was over. They were about to discover just how wrong they were. Chief Engineer Carlos Martinez ran through the corridors of the Defiant as the ship shook around him. Sparks flew from damaged conduits, and the emergency lighting cast everything in a red glow. Other crew members rushed past him, carrying repair, equipment and medical supplies to where they were needed most. Martinez had been working on starships for 20 years, and he had never seen damage this extensive. The Zephyrian weapons had punched through the hull in dozens of places. 3 entire sections were venting atmosphere into space. The main engines were offline, and half the ship's systems were running on backup power. Any other species would have considered the ship destroyed. But Martinez was human, and humans built things differently. He reached the main engineering section and found his team already hard at work. Sparks flew as they welded damaged conduits back together. Others were rerouting power through secondary systems that most species didn't even know existed. "Chief, the main reactor is stable, but we've lost the primary power distribution network," called out Engineer Thompson from behind a control panel. "Then we use the secondary network," Martinez replied. And if that fails, we switch to the tertiary system. Thompson looked confused. Sir, most ships don't have a tertiary power system. Martinez grinned. Most ships aren't built by humans, Thompson. Start bringing the backup generators online. All of them. As his team worked, Martinez opened a communication channel to the bridge. Captain, this is engineering. I need you to know something about our situation. Elena's voice came back immediately. Go ahead, Chief. The Zephyrians hit us hard, but they made one big mistake. They're fighting us like we're any other species in the galaxy. They think that when they damage our primary systems, we're done. But we're not done? Not even close. Every critical system on this ship has at least 2 backups. Our life support can run on 6 different power sources. Our shields have 3 separate generator arrays. Even our weapons have redundant targeting. Systems. Martinez paused as another explosion rocked the ship. Captain, other species build their ships to be efficient and elegant. We build ours to survive. The Defiant can lose 60% of her systems and still fight. On the bridge, Elena felt a surge of hope. She turned to Dr. Sarah Chen, who was working at a science station. Doctor, what can you tell me about their attack patterns? Chen looked up from her displays. Something interesting, Captain. They're not trying to completely destroy us. They're firing in precise volleys, targeting specific systems. It's almost like they're following some kind of formal procedure. What do you mean? I think they're fighting by their own rules of war. The Zephyrians are a warrior culture, but they have strict codes of honor. They expect their enemies to surrender when faced with overwhelming force. They're not used to fighting someone who refuses to give up. Elena nodded. That information might be useful. What else? Their formation is perfect for intimidation, but it's not actually optimal for combat. They've arranged their ships in a sphere around us, which means they have to be careful not to hit each other with their weapons. If we could somehow change the geometry of the battle... Before Chen could finish her thought, Martinez's voice came over the communication system. Again. Captain, I'm ready to implement Protocol Omega. Elena smiled. Protocol Omega was something the human military had developed years ago, but it had never been tested in actual combat. It was designed for exactly this situation, when a human ship was outnumbered and outgunned, and conventional tactics had failed. Do it, Chief. Throughout the ship, systems that had been damaged or offline suddenly came back to life, but they weren't the same systems that had been there before. Martinez and his team had spent the last 20 minutes rebuilding them, combining parts from different systems to create something entirely new. The ship's mining lasers, designed for cutting through asteroids, were now connected to the weapon targeting system. The cargo bay's magnetic crane had been turned into a mass driver capable of launching metal containers at incredible speeds. Even the ship's water recycling system had been modified to create a kind of chemical weapon. All departments, report status, Elena ordered. Medical here. We've treated all the wounded and set up emergency aid stations throughout the ship. Security reporting. My teams are armed and ready for boarding actions. We've also rigged explosives at key choke points in case the aliens try to take the ship. Science department ready? We've modified our sensor array to jam their communications and disrupt their targeting systems. Elena looked around the bridge. Her crew had transformed from explorers and scientists into something much more dangerous. But that transformation revealed something that the Zephyrians didn't understand about humans. Dr. Chen, Elena said, I need you to analyze their command structure. Find me their flagship. Chen worked at her console for several minutes while the Zephyrian fleet continued their attack. The modified systems were holding better than the originals had, but the ship was still taking damage. Got it, Captain. The largest ship in their formation is the command vessel. It's staying back from the main battle, coordinating the attack. Elena studied the tactical display. Admiral Kethvar was keeping his flagship safe while his other ships did the fighting. That told her something important about Zephyrian military thinking. Chief Martinez, how long until our improvised weapons are ready? 2 minutes, Captain. But I have to warn you, these systems were never designed to work together. We're pushing everything well beyond safe operating parameters. Will they work? They'll work, but probably only once. Elena nodded. That would have to be enough. She opened a channel to the entire crew. All hands, this is the captain. In 60 seconds, we're going to show these aliens what happens when you corner a human ship. She paused, thinking about the people under her command. Scientists and engineers who had joined the crew to explore the galaxy in peace. But every one of them had grown up on a world where humanity had spent centuries perfecting the art of warfare. The Zephyrians think they know what we are. They see our ship and assume we're helpless explorers. They don't understand that every human learns to fight, whether they want to or not. They don't know that we've been preparing for this kind of battle since we first looked up at the stars. The ship shuddered as another barrage hit the hull. But now, instead of sounding like the death throes of a dying vessel, it sounded like the growl of an angry predator. They want to see what humans do when we're cornered? Let's show them. Elena looked at her tactical officer. Target the flagship. All weapons, fire when ready. The Defiant's improvised arsenal came to life. Mining lasers designed to cut through. Solid rock sliced through the enemy flagship's shields. Metal containers launched from the cargo bay struck other ships with the force of artillery shells. Even the modified water recycling system began spraying a cloud of corrosive chemicals that ate through alien armor. For the first time since the battle began, it was the Zephyrian ships that were taking damage. Admiral Kethvar's voice came over the communication system, and for the first time, he sounded uncertain. What are you doing? Those weapons, they are not standard for your ship class. Elena smiled as she watched enemy ships scrambling to avoid her improvised attacks. Admiral, you made one mistake when you decided to attack us. What mistake? You assumed we would fight fair. Admiral Kethvar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 3 of his ships were badly damaged, and 2 more were completely dead in space. The human vessel should have been destroyed 20 minutes ago, but instead it was fighting back, with weapons that shouldn't exist. Intelligence Officer Vexhai. Explain this to me, Kethvar growled. How is one damaged exploration ship causing this much trouble? The smaller Zephyrian at the intelligence station worked frantically at his console. Admiral, I'm reading weapon signatures that don't match anything in our database. They appear to be using mining equipment as artillery. Their cargo handling system has been converted into a mass driver. That's impossible. No civilized species fights with mining equipment. Sir, I don't think the humans qualify as civilized by our standards. Kethvar felt a chill run through his body. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered dozens of worlds and defeated countless enemy fleets. They had strict rules about how warfare was conducted, codes of honor that separated them from savage beasts. But the humans seemed to have no such limitations. On his view screen, he watched the human ship launch another salvo of improvised weapons. A cloud of some kind of chemical spray ate through the hull of the cruiser Bloodwind, forcing her crew to abandon ship. Metal containers fired from the human cargo bay punched through the shields of 3 more vessels. Sir, the human ship is hailing us again. Kethvar reluctantly accepted the transmission. The human captain appeared on his screen, looking far. Too calm for someone whose ship was supposedly dying. Admiral, I wanted to thank you for the tactical lesson, Captain Vasquez said. Your formation is really quite impressive. Very orderly and disciplined. You mock me while your ship burns around you? My ship isn't burning, Admiral. A little damaged, maybe, but we're just getting started. The human woman smiled, and Kethvar realized that her expression reminded him of a predator showing its teeth. I have a question for you. How much do you actually know about human ships? Enough. They are crude and inefficient compared to proper warships. See, that's where you're wrong. Let me tell you something about human engineering. We don't build things to be pretty or efficient. We build them to work when everything goes wrong. As if to prove her point, another section of the human ship that had appeared destroyed suddenly came back online. New weapon ports opened in the hull, and fresh shields flickered into existence around damaged areas. Every system on this ship has a backup, Vasquez continued. Every backup has a backup. When we designed the Defiant, we assumed that someday she might have to fight for her life against overwhelming odds. Looks like we were right. Kethvar cut the transmission and turned to his intelligence officer. Vexhai, get me everything we have on human military technology. Now. The intelligence officer worked for several minutes while the battle continued around them. More Zephyrian ships were taking damage as the human vessel revealed new weapons and tactics. Finally, Vexhai looked up with an expression of horror on his face. Admiral, we've been reading their technical specifications wrong. What we thought were design flaws are actually features. Explain. Human ships have redundant systems everywhere. Multiple power grids, backup life support, emergency manufacturing capabilities. They can rebuild themselves during combat using raw materials and fabrication equipment that they carry for their mining operations. Kethvar felt his stomach drop. Are you telling me that this exploration ship is actually a warship? No, sir. It's worse than that. According to these files, all human ships are built this way. Their exploration vessels, their cargo haulers, even their passenger liners, they're all designed to survive combat and fight back if necessary. The Admiral stared at the tactical display as another one of his ships went dark. The human vessel was actually getting stronger as the battle continued, bringing new systems online and deploying weapons that defied every convention of civilized warfare. Sir, there's more. I've been analyzing the crew records we intercepted from their communications. This Captain Vasquez isn't just an explorer. She served in their military for 15 years before taking command of a civilian vessel. Kethvar's 4 eyes narrowed. What about the rest of the crew? The chief engineer fought in something called the Titan Wars. The science officer has advanced degrees in both xenobiology and military strategy. Even their medical officer has combat training. The Admiral realized that everything he had believed about humans was wrong. They weren't peaceful explorers who had stumbled into space travel. They were a warrior species that had learned to hide their true nature behind a mask of scientific curiosity. On the battlefield around them, the human ship was proving this point. It had somehow managed to turn its own damaged hull sections into weapons, launching chunks of twisted metal at his fleet with devastating accuracy. The vessel was literally consuming itself to create new ammunition. Admiral, we're receiving reports from across the fleet. The humans are using tactics that violate 17 different articles of the Galactic War Convention, such as they're targeting our communication arrays with some kind of computer virus. They've deployed autonomous drones made from their own escape pods. And, sir, the intelligence officer paused, looking sick. They're using their waste recycling system to create chemical weapons. Kethvar had fought in dozens of battles across the galaxy, but he had never encountered anything like this. Other species fought with honor and dignity, following established rules that made warfare a civilized affair. The humans seemed to view war as a problem to be solved using any available resources. Sir, incoming transmission from the human vessel. This time, the face on the screen wasn't Captain Vasquez. It was an older man with graying hair and scars on his hands. He wore the uniform of a chief engineer, but his eyes held the hardness of someone who had seen real combat. Zephyrian Fleet, this is Chief Engineer Carlos Martinez. I have a message for your Admiral. Kethvar accepted the transmission reluctantly. I am Admiral Kethvar. What do you want, human? I want you to understand something about my ship, Admiral. The Defiant wasn't built on a military shipyard. She was constructed at a civilian facility by people who build mining vessels and cargo haulers. But you know what? We humans learned a long time ago that there's no such thing as a non-military ship when you're exploring unknown space. As Martinez spoke, Kethvar watched his fleet taking more casualties. 7 ships were now dead or badly damaged, and the human vessel showed no signs of slowing down. Every bolt on this ship was placed by people who grew up hearing stories about ancient Earth wars. Martinez continued. We build everything like our lives depend on it, because someday they might. Today is that day. The transmission showed Martinez turning to look at something off-screen. When he turned back, he was smiling grimly. Admiral, you should know that. Our distress beacon has been active this whole time. The human fleet received our signal about an hour ago. HFY felt ice forming in his veins. What are you saying? I'm saying that in about 30 minutes, you're going to find out what happens when you attack a human ship in distress. Our rescue fleet includes 2 heavy cruisers and a battleship. They're not exploration vessels, Admiral. They're actual warships, built by a species that spent 5,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other. The screen went dark, leaving HFY staring at his own reflection. Around him, his bridge crew worked in tense silence as more damage reports flooded in from the fleet. Sir, his tactical officer called out. Long-range sensors are detecting multiple contacts approaching from the edge of the system. They're moving fast and broadcasting human identification codes. HFY looked at the tactical display and felt his world crumble around him. If one damaged exploration vessel could do this much damage to his fleet, what would happen when real human warships arrived? For the first time in his military career, Admiral HFY began to consider the possibility that he had made a terrible mistake. Intelligence Officer Vexhai worked frantically at his station as more alarming reports flooded in from across the Zephyrian fleet. The human ship had been fighting for over 2 hours now, and instead of growing weaker, it seemed to be getting more dangerous with every passing minute. Admiral, I've completed my analysis of human military history, Vexhai reported, his voice shaking. Sir, we need to retreat, immediately. Admiral HFY turned from the tactical display where he had been watching another of his cruisers. Go dark. Explain. The humans didn't develop faster than light travel through peaceful scientific research like most species. They invented it during something called World War V, when their planet was engaged in a global conflict that lasted 30 years. HFY felt his blood chill. Most species achieved space travel after centuries of cooperation and gradual technological advancement. The idea that an entire planet could develop such technology while actively trying to destroy itself was horrifying. There's more, sir. Human civilian ships carry enough raw materials and fabrication equipment to build small fleets. They call it emergency expansion capability, but it's actually a military doctrine. Every human vessel can become a factory ship if needed. As if to prove the point, the view screen showed the human ship launching new types of weapons that hadn't existed an hour ago. Sleek missiles that moved with impossible agility, seeking out Zephyrian ships and exploding with devastating force. How are they building new weapons during combat? HFY demanded. Their fabrication systems are designed to work with whatever materials are available. They're using debris from their own damaged hull, minerals from their geological samples, even organic compounds from their food storage. The humans can turn anything into a weapon. On the battlefield, the proof was impossible to ignore. The human ship had somehow converted its damaged sensor array into a powerful jamming system that was disrupting Zephyrian communications across the fleet. Chunks of twisted metal from the hull breaches were being fired at relativistic speeds, punching through shields and armor like they were made of paper. Sir, the human ship is hailing us again. This time, the face on the screen belonged to Dr. Sarah Chen, the xenobiologist who had been analyzing Zephyrian tactics throughout the battle. But now, HFY could see something in her eyes that he had missed before. This wasn't just a scientist. This was someone who understood warfare at a fundamental level. Admiral HFY, I thought you might be interested in what we've learned. About your fleet during this engagement, Dr. Chen said calmly. What do you mean? Your ships are magnificent examples of military engineering, perfect formations, disciplined crews, weapon systems that follow every convention of civilized warfare. You fight with honor and dignity, following rules that have governed galactic conflict for centuries. Chen paused, looking directly into the camera. The problem is, Admiral, humans don't follow those rules. We never agreed to them. As she spoke, the human ship deployed something that made Kethvar's spine freeze. Dozens of small objects detached from the vessel's hull and began moving independently toward his fleet. Each one was no larger than a fighter craft, but they moved with purpose and intelligence. "What are those?" he whispered. "Autonomous mining drones, Admiral. We use them to extract resources from asteroids. But with a few software modifications, they make excellent kamikaze weapons. Each one is carrying about 50 tons of high explosives mixed with depleted uranium from our reactor shielding." Kethvar watched in horror as the drones spread out across the battlefield, moving too fast for his weapons to target effectively. They began attaching themselves to Zephyrian ships like parasites, their mining drills easily penetrating hull armor that had been designed to withstand conventional weapons. "You're using civilian equipment as weapons of mass destruction," Kethvar accused. "We're using tools, Admiral. The same tools we use to build colonies and explore new worlds. The difference is context." Chen smiled, and Kethvar realized it was the most terrifying expression he had ever seen. Humans learned long ago that the line between construction and destruction is thinner than most people think. The first drone detonated against the hull of the heavy cruiser Darkstorm. The explosion tore a hole 30 meters wide in the ship's side, venting atmosphere and debris into space. Within seconds, 5 more drones had found their targets. "Sir, we're losing ships faster than we can count," reported his tactical officer. "The human vessel has somehow managed to turn the entire battlefield into a minefield." Kethvar looked at the tactical display and realized that his perfect formation had become a death trap. His ships were packed too closely together to avoid the human drones, but too far apart to provide mutual support. The humans had turned Zephyrian military doctrine against itself. "Admiral," Dr. Chen continued from the view screen, "I want you to understand something about human psychology. We're not a particularly aggressive species compared to some others in the galaxy. But we have one trait that makes us extremely dangerous." "What trait?" "We refuse to accept that any problem is unsolvable. When faced with impossible odds, most species surrender or flee. Humans get creative." As she spoke, the human ship began deploying its final surprise. The cargo bay doors opened wide, revealing not the empty space that should have been there, but a fully functional manufacturing facility. Robotic arms moved with incredible speed, assembling new weapons and defensive systems from raw materials. "Your ship is a factory," Kethvar breathed. "Every human ship is a factory, Admiral. We learned that lesson during the colony wars 200 years ago. Never go anywhere without the ability to build what you need to survive." The newly manufactured weapons came online immediately, adding their firepower to the human ship's already devastating arsenal. Energy cannons that could punch through heavy armor, missile launchers that could saturate an entire sector with ordnance, and defensive systems that made the ship nearly impossible to target. "Sir, long-range sensors confirm it. The human reinforcement fleet will arrive in 15 minutes, reported his sensor operator. Kethvar looked at the tactical display one more time. Of his original 47 ships, only 23 were still in fighting condition. The others were dead, disabled, or trying desperately to retreat from the nightmare that the human vessel had created around them. And this was just one damaged exploration ship. "Admiral," came a transmission from Captain Veltar of the cruiser Stormwind. "Request permission to withdraw. We cannot continue this engagement." More requests followed. His captains, veteran warriors who had never known defeat, were asking to run from a single enemy vessel. But as Kethvar watched another of his ships disappear in a ball of fire, he realized they were right. "Dr. Chen," he said to the human on his view screen, "what do you want?" "We want you to leave, Admiral. Turn your ships around and go home. Tell your people that humanity is not as weak as they thought. Tell them that we build our ships to survive anything the universe can throw at us." Chen leaned forward slightly. and tell them that if they want a fight, we'll give them one. But it won't be the kind of civilized battle they're used to. It will be the kind of war that humans have been perfecting since we first picked up sticks and stones. Kethvar closed his eyes. The choice was clear: retreat now or stay and face the arriving human battle fleet with less than half his original force. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Kethvar gave the order to withdraw. The bridge of the Defiant fell silent as Admiral Kethvar's transmission ended. Captain Elena Vasquez looked around at her crew, seeing the same mixture of exhaustion and amazement on every face. They had done something that should have been impossible. They had made a fleet of 47 warships retreat. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres called from the sensor station, "the Zephyrian ships are pulling back to the edge of the system. Their formation is, well, it's not really a formation anymore." Elena walked over to look at the tactical display. The perfect sphere of enemy ships had dissolved into chaos. Some vessels were limping away under their own power, trailing debris and atmosphere. Others were being towed by their companions. Several ships floated dead in space, their crews already evacuated. "How many did we get?" she asked quietly. 14 ships completely disabled, another 10 with major damage. The rest are retreating, but most of them won't be fighting anyone for months. Elena nodded. It was a victory, but she knew the cost. She opened a ship-wide communication channel. "All departments report casualties and damage status." The reports came in one by one. 17 crew members injured, but none killed. The ship itself was a different story. Whole sections were still sealed off due to hull breaches. The main engines were held together with emergency patches and hope. Half their systems were running on power borrowed from the coffee makers and recycling units, but they were alive, and they had won. "Captain," Chief Martinez's voice came over the intercom. "You need to see what we've accomplished down here in engineering." Elena made her way through corridors that still smelled of smoke and burnt electronics. Emergency lighting cast everything in a red glow, and repair crews worked around the clock to fix critical systems. When she reached the main engineering section, she stopped in amazement. The space looked nothing like it had a few hours ago. Where once there had been neat rows of control panels and monitoring equipment, now there was something that looked more like a weapons factory. Robotic arms continued to work, building ammunition and spare parts from whatever materials they could find. "Chief, this is incredible," Elena said, watching a fabrication unit turn a broken console into missile components. Martinez grinned, his uniform torn and his face streaked with grease. "Captain, we've just proven something that human engineers have suspected for years. Give us enough time and raw materials and we can build anything." "How long did it take you to set all this up?" "About an hour. Most of the components were already there. We just had to connect them in ways the original designers never imagined." He gestured to a device that was creating new hull plates from recycled metal. "The beautiful thing about human engineering is that everything is compatible with everything else if you're creative enough." Elena shook her head in wonder. "What happens now? Can we actually get home?" "Captain, we're not just going home. We're going home better than when we left. All these modifications we made during the battle, they work. They work really well. The Defiant is now capable of things that no exploration ship should be able to do." Before Elena could respond, Lieutenant Torres's voice came over the communication system. "Captain, the human fleet has arrived. Admiral Morrison is requesting permission to come aboard." Elena made her way back to the bridge, where the main view screen showed 3 magnificent human warships approaching their position. The heavy cruisers, indomitable and relentless, flanked the battleship Unconquerable, their hulls gleaming with fresh armor and bristling with weapons. Admiral Morrison appeared. On the screen, a stern-faced woman with gray hair and the bearing of someone who had spent her life in space. "Captain Vasquez, report your status." "Admiral, the Defiant is damaged but operational. We successfully repelled a Zephyrian attack fleet of 47 ships. Morrison raised an eyebrow. 47 ships. Captain, are you certain of that number? Yes. Ma'am, we have sensor logs and battle recordings if you need confirmation. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Captain, I've been in the human fleet for 30 years. I've commanded task forces in major battles against some of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. But I've never heard of a single ship, especially an exploration vessel, defeating a fleet that size. To be honest, Admiral, neither had I. Morrison smiled grimly. Captain, I want you to know that word of this battle is already spreading throughout human space. The story of the Defiant is going to become legend. Over the next few hours, Elena watched as repair ships from the human fleet worked to restore her vessel. But she noticed something interesting. Instead of simply fixing the damage, the repair crews were studying the modifications her team had made. Engineers from the battleship took detailed scans of the improvised weapon systems. Technical specialists examined the automated manufacturing setup that Martinez had created. Dr. Chen approached Elena as she stood watching the work. Captain, I've been analyzing the battle from a psychological perspective. I think we may have accomplished something more important than just winning a fight. What do you mean? For centuries, humans have been seen as newcomers to galactic civilization. Other species view us as crude and unsophisticated. They think our technology is primitive and our methods are barbaric. Chen gestured toward the aid view screen, where Zephyrian ships were still limping away from the battle site. But today we proved something different. We showed them that human crudeness is actually adaptability. Our primitive technology is actually more flexible than their advanced systems. What they see as barbaric methods are really just unlimited creativity. Elena nodded slowly. You think this will change how other species see us? I think this will change how we see ourselves. The crew of the Defiant just proved that humans don't need overwhelming firepower or superior numbers to win. We just need to be human. A few hours later, Elena stood in her ready room writing her official report. Outside her window, she could see the 3 human warships maintaining a protective formation around the Defiant. In the distance, the last of the Zephyrian fleet was disappearing into faster-than-light travel. She thought about what to write, how to explain what had happened. The facts were simple enough. 47 alien warships had attacked 1 human exploration vessel, and the aliens had been forced to retreat. But the implications were much more complex. Elena began typing. The events of today demonstrate that human vessels, even those designed for peaceful purposes, possess capabilities that our enemies do not expect or understand. The crew of the Defiant proved that human ingenuity and determination can overcome seemingly impossible odds. She paused, thinking about her crew. Martinez and his engineers who had turned a damaged ship into a weapons factory. Chen and her scientists who had analyzed enemy tactics and found weaknesses. Every person aboard who had refused to give up even when surrender seemed like the only rational choice. More importantly, Elena continued writing, today's battle shows that the human spirit cannot be broken by superior numbers or advanced technology. When cornered, humans do not surrender. We adapt, we improvise, and we fight back with whatever tools we have available. Elena finished her report and transmitted it to fleet headquarters. Within hours, she knew, copies would be sent to every human ship in space. The story would spread through the colonies, the research stations, the trading posts scattered across dozens of star systems. Humans everywhere would learn that 47 alien warships had retreated from 1 damaged human vessel. They would understand that their species was not as helpless as their enemies believed. They would know that human ships, human crews, and human determination were forces to be respected throughout the galaxy. And somewhere in Zephyrian space, Admiral Kethavar would be writing his own report, trying to explain to his superiors how the pride of their fleet had been humbled by a single enemy ship. The lesson would spread among the alien species as well. Humans were not the easy targets. They appeared to be. Elena looked out at the stars and smiled. The Defiant was going home, carrying with her a story that would change everything. The galaxy had just learned what humans were truly capable of, and nothing would ever be the same.